This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just hit the link in the show description to support now.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
What makes a great pair of glasses? At Warby Parker, it's all the invisible extras without the extra cost. Their designer quality frames start at $95, including prescription lenses, plus scratch-resistant, smudge-resistant, and anti-reflective coatings, and UV protection, and free adjustments for life. To find your next pair of glasses, sunglasses, or contact lenses, or to find the Warby Parker store nearest you, head over to warbyparker.com. That's warbyparker.com.
This is Writers on Film, the only podcast dedicated to books on cinema. Hello and welcome to Writers on Film. My name is John Bleasdale. I'm a writer and critic, and this week I'm very excited to be talking to Noah Isenberg, who has written the book on Casablanca, We'll Always Have Casablanca. I'm really excited about this because if you go to my Letterboxd page, you will see Casablanca is right up there in my favourite films, even though, you know, such notions and such ideas as picking 4 favourite films out of the entire body of work of world cinema is a little bit ridiculous, but Casablanca is definitely a film that I have found moving, funny, influential, and I've probably seen it the most times of any single movie. I've watched it again and again on television. I've got the DVD, I had the video cassette, now I have the Blu-ray very recently because of Noah's book. It's just a film that's really stayed with me, and I've also seen it several times on the big screen. There were some Liverpool. They would show. I think they showed it at the Philharmonic. I think I saw it once on the big screen in the Student Guild, and it was the last film to ever screen at the cinema that was opposite Lime Street Station. It's it used to be a Canon, I think. And they were closing down, and the last film was Casablanca. It was an amazingly moving screening in which they also brought the old projectionist who'd been at the cinema for a very long time out to the front, and everybody applauded him. If you enjoy the episode, please remember to subscribe, to like. Spotify is now doing ratings, so if you can hit a high rating, that would be great. Also, obviously, if you could leave reviews if you're listening via Apple Podcasts, then that would be great as well. Or wherever you get podcasts, if you could share and help me out, that would be really well appreciated. You can follow me on Twitter at Dr. Jonty, DRJONTY. But before you do any of that homework, please enjoy the conversation. So it was a film I'd heard a lot about, and then it was on like a BBC Two Humphrey Bogart season, which is something
that sounds about right.
Yeah, something the BBC used to do a lot, which I'm not sure you get anymore. These sort of TV curated seasons.
Right. I mean, I think that the BBC did that around the time that student film societies were doing that kind of work on campuses, at least on these shores. But that kind of repertory programming, you find it, they do that. Does Turner Classic Movies now have a viewership in the UK? Yeah, TCM.
I don't know if so. I mean, I'm in Italy, so
I know you're in Italy. Okay,
but I'm not. I don't know if they do,
because that's another place where they do that. But as you presumably know, John, Casablanca is the most has enjoyed the most broadcasts on television of any motion picture in history. So it's I'm not surprised that that's the way that you watched it. And it continues to be shown on television. I mean, here, that's why I asked about Turner Classic Movie, because I sometimes joke with people that it really ought to just be renamed the Casablanca channel because it's always on.
Right.
But they and going back to your initial point, they will curate or program around an actor or a director or a writer or some combination.
What was your first experience of it? Was it a TV?
It's funny. That's a very good question. I remember watching it with my mom, and I think that it probably was on television. I don't think we went to see it. Saw it in the theater when I was a student later. So at university, actually at graduate school, Berkeley. But I didn't, I'm not one of those people who see all the Harvard and Radcliffe students. They would flock to the Brattle Theater where they would show it, habitually twice a year during the reading and exam period. Kind of let off steam and go watch your Humphrey Bogart movies with the centerpiece being Casablanca. But I didn't go to Harvard, so so I didn't watch it there. And I had an opportunity to watch it there Valentine's Day, on February 14, 2017. It was the first event for the book was at the Harvard bookstore. But on the 14th, I caught a train and had to get back to New York. I did with Molly Haskell, who's a wonderful film critic and historian. We did a conversation that same night in New York at a terrific bookstore in Soho called McNally Jackson. So I missed my chance to go to the Brattle.
Molly's coming on the podcast later this year, hopefully.
Wonderful. She's a dear friend. She's unparalleled. She's she's amazing, absolutely amazing. One of our finest film critics ever.
I'm absolutely delighted to sort of, I reached out to her a little while ago and she got back to me. I'm very pleased to have her on, pending sort of arranging things and scheduling stuff and that. But
she's very generous. I'm sure she'll make time for you. So
yeah, no, I appreciate it. I already got that feeling from the email. If you didn't get feelings like that, but there is a tone of voice that you.
No, she's an amazing. I was lucky enough to get her out here to Austin pre-apocalypse to do. She did at the Austin Film Society. She introduced and then did a conversation for Hawks's It's Girl Friday.
Oh,
yeah. And then I was teaching screwball comedy that semester. And so she spoke with my students as well. It was wonderful. She's so great.
Wow. Yeah. And what a fun combination as well.
Yeah. It was really, really, really fun.
So what was, so when you first watched it with your mum, what was was there an immediate impact or a sort of an immediate appeal for you?
Well, I was a sort of a surly teen at the time, I think, and I think I reflexively questioned anything that my mom or father, for that matter. My mom was more the cinephile in the family. Though I used to go to the movies with my father. My father, unfortunately, is no longer alive, but we used to go when I was younger to the movies as well. But it was with my mom at that time that I watched Casablanca, and I think it was kind of a knee-jerk or reflexive response to question anything that she would like, and to automatically classify it as the taste of the middle-aged, the older set. And that, look, it took some maturing on my part, needless to say. But one of the things that I did come to realize, not only in the process of writing the book, but also teaching classes centered around Casablanca, and having young students take these classes is that, you know, it doesn't require you being in your, 50s, 60s, 70s. You can appreciate this film when you're still in your teens. And in fact, I have a couple of kids, one of whom is now making his way deeper and deeper into the teens. And we watched it when I was writing the book, the two boys and I, and they really liked it.
Yeah.
Which is the older one, especially. The older one was beginning to learn more about the Second World War, and I think he found it a gripping portrayal of that period, which is one of the ways in which to understand the film, I think. And it really kind of, it captivated then, at the time, captivated audiences and continues to captivate audience on that level. Obviously, there are many, many other levels. I mean, he was far less interested, I think, in the love story.
That was me, you see. I was the other way around. I watched it and I was 16. I can remember now I was 16 because I was working in a shoe shop. And I've got that in my head. And my family had gone out. It was before Christmas. So everybody was out of the house. And I watched it, and I had and when they started drinking, I thought, oh, and I sneaked off and got some gin from my mum's, and I drank gin and tonic while watching it, and it felt like
very sophisticated, very
sophisticated, very cool. The drunken Humphrey Bogart, and then Ingrid Bergman turning up, and there are 2 or 3 shots of her, and I was smitten, and that just blew me away.
Well, that's obviously another very common, I think, response that the film elicits in viewers, and that's through Bergman, and just through her. I mean, just the way that she kind of fills up the frame, and just as the way that her eyes then fill up with tears when she sort of in the singing of La Marseillaise, and but even just the way that she lights up any scene in which she appears. She doesn't have a ton of dialogue. It's not the most, this is not a terribly radical, certainly not a radical feminist position that she takes in any respect. She's always sort of in tow with her, whether it's with Laszlo or Rick for that matter. And, and I even has that, in fact, when talking with Molly about this, one of the lines that she finds so kind of cringeworthy in the film is when she turns to Rick and asks him to do the thinking for her.
Yes.
So it has all that, and yet somehow she's just, look, the 27-year-old Swedish-born Ingrid Bergman is just as she the book opens with this epigraph from her in which she talks about kind of almost a mystical dimension of Casablanca, that it kind of needed to the film, in a way, it filled a need, and it filled a need that predated the preceded the film, and there is that sort of pent up need for a movie like this, a movie that kind of follows a character arc of Rick Blaine, and this the subordinating one's libidinal desires and one for the greater good. I mean, this was certainly a message that was at the time when America, just recently entered the fight, and when you still had a very, very large and powerful isolationist faction in the U.S. that wasn't quite ready to get into the war. And in fact, their main slogan, "No foreign entanglements," I think was still resonant for a lot of Americans. But to have that film perform that, so it has an almost propagandistic function. It is aimed at, just as the Capra series, Why We Fight, also, much more explicitly took on that task. But Ingrid Bergman, yes, on some level, she's just kind of an appendage in certain scenes, and yet, despite that, she's just she's not really what you'd call a scene stealer in the conventional sense of a scene stealer, but boy, does she light it up.
What you were saying earlier, I was just thinking of the sort of, to translate that into a sort of meme language, it's sort of like, yeah, sex is great, but have you ever tried winning the Second World War with a friendship?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That would be the sort
of good distillation, John. I think that's pretty much it. And look, let's face it, there were 2, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but there were 2 competing censorship bodies, that both of which were bearing down on the film. There was the Production Code Administration, the Hays Code, which was the self-censorship body that went into effect in summer of 34 and remained intact until the second half of the 60s. And then there was the Office of War Information that vetted all scripts and films that were, feature-length work that was done in Hollywood from the time, basically from the moment after Pearl Harbor, the same time that actually the script for Casablanca arrived in Burbank, California, Warner Brothers Studios, as fate would have it, up until the end of the war. And so in this particular instance, the sex is good, but winning the Second World War is obviously better. You take the final scene of the film, about which there's so much conjecture and people love to kind of speculate, but there's no way that Ingrid Bergman can stay with Bogey, that Ilsa can stay with Rick, because, well, there are two reasons. It's very, very simple, but people don't often think about these things. One, for her to stay with Rick would be tantamount to condoning adultery. So you're not going to get away with that with the production code, Mr. And the other, if she stays with Rick, then she leaves her husband, Victor, to board that plane, and it will no doubt, compromise the good fight. So it's the perfect solution. I mean, the ending of that film is wonderful in many ways, including the Hal Wallace line, Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, but also because it just so neatly kind of ties up this otherwise irredeemable problem, right? What do you do with this torrid love affair that cannot somehow continue? And what do you do in terms of lending, full-throated endorsement and support of the Second World War? And that all gets worked out. I mean, and still, miraculously enough, thanks to, I guess, Hal Wallace's line and Claude Rains and Humphrey Bogart marching off into the mist on the tarmac, is that it still has enough ambiguity, and in fact, so much ambiguity that many people speculate that is in fact the true romance. The true romance is actually Captain Renault and Rick. But anyway.
If I was a woman, Rick, and exactly. Talking, I'd be very jealous.
I would be in love with you or with Rick if I were a woman, and if I weren't around, I think too is the way he said some other.
That brilliant line. And if I weren't around, that's a cracker. He's such a good character.
He's wonderful, and he gets the best lines actually in terms of the wit. He gets the lines that were no doubt crafted by the Epstein twins, Philip and Julius, who are known for their really, really mordant sense of humor and for their irreverent wit. And that irreverent wit, I think, is all in the hands of, well, I mean, Bogey has some great lines too, but I think that Claude Rains as Captain Renault really gets in some of the zingers.
You feel it's a sort of an ensemble movie in that sense, that there's no, I mean, that's what I loved about your book as well. It brought out loads of stories, some of the stuff I didn't know, like Yvonne and the Russian bartender were actually married and stuff like that. But
you got halfway there. Yvonne and the croupier and
right, the croupier.
Yeah. No, yeah. Not the Russian bartender's Leonid Kinsky, and he's a funny one, but he was basically a drinking buddy of Bogey. That's how he ended up getting cast in the film. But no, it's Marcel Dalio, who was a major star of Jean Renoir's, whether it's Rules of the Game or Grand Illusion, but they were married. Yeah, Yvonne and we're in the process of getting divorced actually during the production.
I mean, that's the thing, that there's this sort of a symbiosis, if that's the right word. I've got a horrible feeling it isn't, but let's see when we get to the end of the sentence. Between the fictional sort of Rick's Cafe and the original play was called Everybody Comes to Rick, and the movie, in the sense that it's got all these immigrants and all these people coming to the movie at a precise point in history, in the same way the characters are coming to Casablanca at a precise point of history, not because they want to, but because of history,
Yeah, but I don't think it's a bad word at all, symbiosis. I think that the different players, especially, you get about 75 members or so of the extended cast, so not just the 14 or so credited players, the principals. But of those 75, nearly all of them were European-born refugees, and many of them had actually lived through much of the history that's being told on screen. And so there is this almost strange symbiotic relationship between the script. I mean, there's something that is, to use Ingrid Bergman's term, mystical or magical, if you prefer, and just I think you'd be hard pressed to find a film in which the actors, the technical crew, the writers, and we go back to Everybody Comes to Rick's, that was began after Murray Burnett had witnessed the Anschluss and these languishing refugees in Vienna, hoping to secure exit visas. All of that is so completely bound up with the project and represented in the very figures, both on screen and off. I mean, I think there is some sort of a strange, almost symbiotic relationship between the material and the players who had a hand in it. When I say players, I don't mean necessarily in this particular case just the actors. I mean the different agents sort of in its creation. So again, starting with the 27-year-old English teacher Murray Burnett from New York City, who ends up traveling to Europe that fateful summer of 38, and his writing partner Joan Allison, who helps him to craft the 3-act stage play Everybody Comes to Rick's, through the Epstein twins, Philip and Julius, who I mentioned Capra's Why We Fight. I mean, they stopped their work near the beginning to go off to DC and to work with Frank Capra and creating these documentary films that propagandistic in nature, meant to convince the American public at large to support the war. And then all the way through, Mike Curtiz, who has Michael Curtiz, the director, who has family still stranded in Europe. S.C. Sakal, similar position, both of them Hungarian-born, also has family stranded. Let's not forget about the producer, Hal Wallace. This was one in a string of his signature. Today's actually Paul Henreid's birthday.
Right.
And the first major Hal B. Wallace production was Now Voyager, which was still playing in theaters with Paul Henreid and Bette Davis. I just sent out a tweet today, the famous scene of him lighting the 2 cigarettes and passing one to Bette Davis. But Hal Wallace, who was very much aware of the kind of urgency of a film like this, even Jack Warner, who was really more concerned with making a buck than anything else, he was aware of it and had the wisdom to when the film was already in the can, but the release date was not till 43. On Thanksgiving Day 42, they end up releasing it because of the great success, the really breathtaking success of General Patton's troops in North Africa in Operation Torch. So Casablanca is on the front page of every newspaper in North America, and presumably also across the pond. But so all of these people are somehow really deeply invested in a film that otherwise is just another kind of routine work at an assembly line, production like Warner Brothers. But because of all these other factors, it's not just that routinized work. It's not just another title on the already crowded docket of productions that Warner Brothers happens to be working on that year. It stands out, and it stands out for that reason. And in fact, that's what Pauline Kael. She was interviewed by Elgin Hermits, who did a great making of the book called Round Up the Usual Suspects. Good title, right? And she interviewed Pauline. Pauline Kael had long passed by the time. I interviewed a lot of people as well, but many of the cast members had long passed. In fact, you mentioned Madeleine LeBeau, who plays Yvonne, Rick's on again, off again, paramour. She had just passed when I was finishing the book in a Spanish coastal town, and she was the last of the principal cast members to die. But Elgin Hermits interviewed Pauline Kael, who otherwise didn't have much charitable didn't have a very charitable assessment of the film. She called it schlocky romanticism. But she interviewed her, and what Pauline Kael said is that because of all of these people who were playing in the film who actually had come from that world, who spoke, you didn't have Americans doing poor, sort of shoddy accents, doing their best to impersonate, Germans, Austrians, French, etc. You actually had these people who had witnessed the events, who had come from Europe, who had fled the Nazi regime themselves, who were either playing refugees on screen, or in the case of someone like Conrad Veidt, who was a principled anti-Nazi, of course, playing a Nazi himself, because who knows the Nazis better than Conrad Veidt? So, but all that is what Pauline Kael, suggested gave the film something that it otherwise would not have had, and would have merely been, in her words, schlocky romanticism.
Oh, schlocky romanticism. That's my bag, though. I like that. I mean, I'll pretend to think Citizen Kane is the best film ever made, but I really think it's Casablanca when it comes down to it.
That's what Roger Ebert once said. Another, sorry, I keep naming all these American critics for you. I'll get to some of the Brits in a second, but Ebert said, people always ask him what's his favorite movie. And I think he almost felt obliged to say Citizen Kane, but then he said, then they ask, what's the movie that you most enjoy watching? He says Casablanca. So, and I think that's an important distinction to make, and it's an invidious comparison anyway. That sort of Kane versus, they're such completely different movies. But I do think you're right. One of them, there was a piece that came out in the New York Times Book Review many years ago, again, Dan Coyce, which was on aspirational viewing. The movies that you think, it's kind of like, claiming that you love Tolstoy, or that the aspirational reading. I'm trying to think of other towering European novelists that people claim to love, Thomas Mann, whatever, Proust, etc.
Proust. I was going to say Proust.
Exactly. You could nothing like cuddling up in bed and reading Swan's Way, or or Robert Musil as well, Man Without Qualities. I mean, these massive novels. This is aspirational reading, and the same is true, I think, in the sort of celluloid universe. There's certain films that have a kind of gravitas, none more perhaps than Citizen Kane, and people feel that they must claim that as part of their repertory of favorite films. But I agree with you, and I'm not suggesting that Kane is in any way a bad movie, not at all. But it's nowhere near as pleasurable an experience as watching Casablanca. And I think I can say that, even, needless to say, I'm biased, but you'd be hard pressed to find people who would tell you otherwise.
I mean, I don't know if this is necessarily a sort of criteria that you can even use critically, but I would happily live in Casablanca.
Yeah.
I would happily stay in Rick's, but I wouldn't want to live in Xanadu. I would. It's so maybe there's just that Citizen Kane again. Yeah, you're right. We don't have to compete.
You brought to mind Purple Rose of Cairo. Isn't Purple Rose of Cairo where you enter into the celluloid universe?
Exactly.
And I'm with you. It is a thoroughly enchanting and even seductive world. Yes, and yes, Xanadu is, we're kind of heading more into Succession land in Xanadu. I mean,
a beautiful gilded cage.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I thought, so just winding back a little bit when we were talking about the immigrants in the background and everything, and the accents. I think you call one of your chapters actually. Such much. Yes, because that dialogue, that so much o'clock, such much.
Yeah, exactly.
What clock?
It's just it is a direct and wooden translation from the German. It's just
word for word,
coming up with what would be the idiomatic expression in English. They just go straight from the German to the English, and that's where you get that. And it's very, very funny, I think. I mean, especially funny I think it's funny for anybody, but it is, so these are two Austrian refugee actors, Ilka Grüning and Ludwig Stößel, who are playing refugees en route to America, just as they themselves were just years ago. And then you have the Hungarian-born cabaret actor Esi Sakal, Cuddles, as he was known, the jowly fellow Carl, And he is cuddly, right? Come on,
Yeah, he's a Dr. Snuggles.
Is definitely a very appropriate nickname, I think. Who listens to them and says, "Oh yes, you will get along beautifully in America." He says, "Oh sure you will."
I brought the good brandy. He said.
Yeah. There's, exactly. This is just what the he says. Drink nur die Angestellten, he says, and he says it in this very, very Viennese inflected German. Only the staff, gets a hold of this. This is only for basically for the insiders. So he brings it, yes, and he says, but the good brandy and a third glass, he says, and a third glass, so that he can have the brandy with them.
I mean, that's where I think there's a warmth and a generosity in the film, is that you're not laughing at Johnny Foreigner for not getting the right words. You're sort of with them,
Absolutely. And you're cheering them on, the fact that they're preparing to go to America, the fact that they're among the lucky ones who secured an exit visa. And absolutely, no, there's nothing cold-hearted, far from it. I mean, I think the terms you just used, warmth and generosity. I mean, I think watching Casablanca in many respects, even there are the slightly more propagandistic aspects of the film, and I think it's important to recognize those. But taken as a whole, it's really like, it's a warm bath. I mean, it's just there is so much of that generous spirit, and I think that it's funny. So when I was writing the book already. Trump was had just begun his term as president, and the kind of xenophobia and anti-foreigner rhetoric was really just getting amped up. And so it was very difficult for me to look at this picture and to think of this larger kind of cultural history that I try to, recount in the book, without it being somehow refracted through the lens of the present, and the Syrian refugees who were being, who were also waiting in rapt anticipation, the way that the refugees in North Africa were to cross the Atlantic, and those treacherous journeys from Greece, to where were they headed to Spain? In fact,
from North Africa to Italy, and from sort of
exactly. There are these different. I mean, these are the other refugee trails. I'm a bit geographically challenged here. I'm trying to remember exactly the route that they took. But yes, I remember that they were on Lesbos. There was a huge group of refugees that had come from Syria, and you're right, in Italy. And again, in that moment, we didn't have the message that was being transmitted so powerfully in Casablanca to audiences circa 42, 43, which is, we need to do something. We need to, and it was just the opposite. Whether it was in Italy, or whether it was in the U.S., or whether it was in Hungary, or elsewhere, this sort of nativist rhetoric and these autocratic regimes, it was beginning to really resonate again for me, and become that much more urgent. I mean, just as so when Murray Burnett returned from Europe at 38, he told his writing partner Joan Allison that they have to do something. We need to there was an urgency. This was, so they were writing this. It wasn't just so much or exclusively in the name of art that they were writing Everybody Comes to Rick's, but also in the name of politics. And you kind of have the in sort of thicker brushstrokes, but you have that backdrop already in the three-act stage play. And of course, that gets punched up by the Epsteins and by Howard Koch in the adapted screenplay.
And of course, you've got the sort of the thing that isn't spoken of underneath it, and now watching it is sort of unavoidable. Of like, nobody says the word Jew in the film, but that you can't watch it post 1945 and not be watching it with that idea that many of these people who are trying to get out are fleeing for their lives because they're Jewish.
Correct. I mean, the majority of them were, or at least even if they didn't consider themselves to be Jewish, The
Right.
Nazi regime had branded them Jewish. And what I mean by that is that many of them were so thoroughly assimilated that in many respects and this is this is almost a cliche at this point, but thought themselves to be more German or more Austrian than the Austrians or Germans. So they were then suddenly branded Jews and unwanted and thus forced to flee. But you're absolutely right. I mean, essentially, there are a few exceptions, but I always the bookmarks that I tend to give is between Around the Jazz Singer and Gentleman's Agreement. You just don't have references to Jews on screen. There are a few exceptions.
Right.
In fact, Claude Rains plays a rabbi in a Warner Brothers production. Oh God, I wish I could give you the title, but in the 40s, and that's one of the very, very few exceptions. But you're right. I mean, I think it's funny. I don't know whether audiences in 42, 43, so from Thanksgiving Day onwards, from November and then into 43, 44 during the war, would have necessarily thought of that. I almost think not, only because newspapers were so careful, all manner of media. So just as in the picture business too, and this has been written about at considerable length. But you had many of the studio bosses had come from Europe themselves, were Jewish as well. They didn't want to rock the boat, and they didn't want. One of the things that they were really doing was they were serving as sort of arbiter.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Of taste, and they were shaping American culture and American social mores and all that. They didn't want anybody to look at their films. And in fact, this is one of the things that happened when Harry Warner was brought in to testify before Congress in September of 41, just months before the bombing of Pearl Harbor. He was accused of beating the drums of war and accused of being the term. I mean, it's to hear this term today. It's amazing. It makes me. It's not much of a threat in my case. I'd say I pull out my hair, but all my hair is gone, so I can't. That's not much of a threat. But prematurely anti-fascist was the term that they used. Prematurely anti-fascist. Wow. Yeah, exactly. So they were beating the drums of war, and they were prematurely anti-fascist. And so Harry Warner testified before this, again, very vocal and powerful isolationist faction in Congress. And you think once more about their chief slogan, no foreign entanglements. And, there was...
America first, essentially.
Yes, absolutely. It was America first. It was. I mean, the line is direct. I don't think there's any stretch. People... you'll take some heat when you start drawing other affinities between Nazi tactics and America first. But I think that the line between the isolationists and nativists in the 1940s to the Trumpers and America first, I mean, it's a very clear one. It's not even a jagged line.
Right.
But I think that they did not want. I know that they did not want to be thought of in any way as un-American.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's when you get the McCarthy years, the House Un-American Activities Committee, and they've been branded communist. They didn't want to be thought of as un-American. Communist, even then, and that of course heats up even more after the war, or in any respect different, really. I mean, there was a almost a moral imperative as they saw it, I think, to make movies that spoke to middle America, to the masses, not niche stuff, not it just didn't, it wasn't done. And obviously we've seen things move in a very, very different direction in Hollywood in recent years, but I think that that's taken a long, long time. And I just was out in LA a couple weeks ago, actually 3 weeks ago, at the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures for a Vienna and Hollywood series that they did, and I gave a keynote lecture on Some Like It Hot, and then introduced a screening of Casablanca that night in the David Geffen Theater.
Oh, lovely!
Which was a lot of fun. So I don't mean to merely to toot my horn here, but one of the reasons I want to tell you is that one of the things that and I didn't follow, this sort of stuff doesn't interest me too much, and it it becomes almost like a shouting match that you'd find in on Twitter or wherever. But there were people who felt that the Academy had not recognized the number of Jews who actually had helped, because they still were operating in a way that didn't want to speak to that. And I'm not sure that's entirely true, but I do think that there still is, that impulse has, over generations has been, don't draw too much attention to that. Don't, be careful. You could almost hear a grandmother telling you that, or it would be the case in my family, but don't draw too much attention to yourself.
Right.
And so, yes, in Casablanca, sorry, now to dip a small tangent there, but in Casablanca, I think it's that principle applies.
But I also think that's why when you refer to the propaganda, and I agree, obviously it's to the service of you can see a very clear sort of propagandistic message. I don't mind it, because I'm thinking, well, good. We need to fight Nazis. I'm not that uncomfortable with it.
Right. I agree wholeheartedly, but it is there. It's unlike other more subtle aspects of the film. This is really front and center. Oh, look, the drowning out of Die Wacht am Rhein, which is one of the most famous and one of the most powerful scenes in the history of motion pictures.
Yeah.
Is a clear call for people to stand up and sing for freedom. I mean, they're singing La Marseillaise in this case, and not whatever Star Spangled Banner.
That's what I was going to say. Doesn't that to some degree sort of mitigate it? Because propaganda makes me feel of sort of nationalism, whereas this is more like internationalism. You've got the Spanish flamenco guitarist playing the,
Carmen Mura was the moment that she starts playing that guitar, it's coming. I agree with you 100% here. Yes, were they to be standing up and singing God Bless America, it would be a very different film. And in a way, having this international and it's a group of refugees largely who are standing up and singing as a sort of a surrogate, it still drives home the need to fight, right? The need to defend yourself, the need to do the right thing. I mean, that's what's also, I mean, in the 1940s, and by 42 for sure at the latest, I think it's a pretty clear moral decision that needs to be made, and one that to my mind is really quite easy to make. But you're right, it's not espousing jingoism or nativism or anything, any of the insidious ism. What it is calling for to a certain extent is a kind of internationalism, is cooperation among nations, cooperation among different ethnicities and backgrounds, to join forces to fight this evil, to fight fascism.
And also, I mean, the Marseille comes out of the French Revolution and the sort of birth of modern liberalism and modern,
No, you're absolutely right. Interestingly, I mean, that's got a slightly tortured history, as so many songs do. I guess it was also used as a sort of rallying. I think, I can't remember whether it was in the war against Algeria. I mean, all of these anthems end up finding their way into the muck, it seems.
Yeah, it's got a couple of verses.
Yeah. There's something about blood and the sword, and I can't remember. But anyway, what's being sung here, and what's so important is that the citizens must rise, and the citizens must fight, and it's not, again, it's not militaristic. It's kind of a popular front, really. And it's funny. These are things that are more subtle. They're brought up, but they harken back to the stage play. To Everybody Comes to Rick's. But Rick Blaine was also a freedom fighter. I mean, he was fighting on the side of the loyalists in Spain, as Claude Rains's character, Captain Renault, reminds him.
And got paid very well both times.
Yeah, exactly. You would have been paid much better had you been on the side of the victor, is what he says.
Yes.
So yeah, he's definitely not only a man of the left, clearly, and if you're going to kind of dissect things politically, but he's also somebody who likes to fight on the side of the underdog. And this, right. the group assembled inside Rick's Cafe, who do they represent more than anything else? The underdog. They're the ones who are the persecuted. They're the ones who must rise and fight against the Nazis. And this is all part of the sort of propagandistic nature of the film, but it's good propaganda.
and even Laszlo at the end says, we're going to win this time. And that this time is like, because we never win.
Right, exactly. This time I know our side will win. That's right. That's what he says to Rick, because Rick has joined, and he knows too. This is what's funny, because, poor Paul Henreid, whose birthday is being celebrated today.
Happy birthday, Paul.
Happy birthday, Paul. And his daughter, Monica, we all traveled to Morocco together on this State Department junket. That was a lot of fun. Algene Harmetz was there, Jessica Raines, Claude Rains' daughter. But Monica Henreid is doing a terrific job of preserving the legacy of her father, and she has a documentary film that Paul Henreid Beyond Victor Laszlo, I believe, is the title. But anyway, Paul Henreid is, especially here, I don't know whether this is so much the case in the UK, but he's often just eclipsed by Bogart. People, the love of Bogart, people are always, I'm on Team Rick. They're always, you need to declare your. But Paul Henreid really does embody the spirit of the anti-Nazi and again that's who he was. He wasn't this is he's of course performing. He is an actor after all, but this is those were his convictions, and he embodies them with such power. I think he's accused on occasion, people who are less charitable, he's a bit of an empty, whatever, stuffed shirt or empty suit. He's stiff compared to Rick, but it's easy to look stiff compared to Rick when Ingrid Bergman is planting her, her mouth on Bogey and only giving the occasional peck on the cheek.
I know
to Victor. So
one question I've got, and this might be my stupidity that I'm revealing, but when Rick at the end says to Victor, she came up to my room last night and pretended she still loved me, and I let her pretend.
Yeah.
Is he saying to Victor, I had sex with your wife?
Yes.
Sorry?
He's just kind of he's coming clean about it, but that's exactly what he's saying.
Man, because I was watching it this time going, I've never noticed this before. What the hell is he saying?
That's exactly what he's saying. And visually, that's what Arthur Edison's camera is telling us when Ilsa goes to visit Rick and try to get those letters of transit from him, and in the process, falls into his arms, and they have that impassioned embrace, the kind of kiss that you never see with Laszlo. Again, why is it that Rick looks so good? But that's when Edison's camera, gives us that phallic
watchtower, the post-coital lighthouse.
The light we get the watchtower, and then Rick smoking the sort of post-coital cigarette. All these were, this is just the way in which Hollywood movies from the 1940s could communicate with savvy audiences, saying, "Oh yes, they just slept together." And Rick, rhetorically, again, in terms of I was mentioning screwball comedy moments ago, and Molly Haskell and her great work on that period. But screwball comedy was famous for using innuendo, double entendre, that sort of stuff. And in a way, what Rick is doing there, not so much innuendo, but is basically telling audiences, oh yeah, she came, she pretended to still love me, And I let her pretend. Now, in a very, very innocuous vein, okay, you let her let her pretend, big deal. So she gave him a hug and a kiss. But really, what he's saying is, I slept with your wife.
Yeah.
And I felt you
it's
needed
a single
to know.
entendre, really.
Yeah, right,
Exactly.
exactly.
Going back a little bit to one of the things that always amazes me about Casablanca is how Michael Curtiz's reputation is not much higher than on the basis of this film. Citizen Kane, unbelievable masterpiece. I love Orson Welles. He's justly, that Mankiewicz guy didn't just scribbled a few notes. I'm not entirely impressed by him, but Michael Curtiz directs this phenomenal film, and it's not, it has a raft of phenomenal films, and yet doesn't seem to get. And he has a style. He's not just a jobbing director. He fills the screen. He's as much a technical. A technically accomplished director as Spielberg.
Absolutely. In fact, I think Spielberg kind of, in a way, picks up on. Spielberg's much more akin to Curtiz than he is to Wells. That's for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. Or Kubrick, or any of those sort of.
Yeah. In fact, by the way, I keep singing the praises of dear old Molly, but she wrote this great book on Spielberg, which
of course, yes.
And she's not a major fan, but I think turned out to be the best person to write a book like that, because she wasn't just a fanboy or fangirl, and kind of came to Spielberg critically. It's a good read. But I agree with you. Curtiz says recently there is a good biography, and it's a kind of joint biography / critical study by Alan Rode that came out not too long ago. Rode. He says his name, Rode.
Rode. I'm just writing it down as we speak.
No, he'd be interesting to have a conversation with. The book came out after the Casablanca book, maybe a year or so, but we definitely did an event or two together. We did one in DC, in Silver Spring, actually, at the AFI, American Film Institute. And so he's I think brought new attention to Curtiz, but you're right. He's definitely not thought of. And this is something, it's funny. I'm currently working on two books and no books at the same time, but a book on Some Like It Hot, and a book on Wilder in the same series as the Spielberg series that Molly Hassel's book appeared, this Yale Jewish Life series. These are short interpretive biographies.
Right.
Wilder was very different from Curtiz in many, 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 many respects, starting with the fact that Wilder is at heart a writer and continued to be a writer, and at the very least would co-write the scripts of his American films in addition to directing them. So there's that aspect. But both of them, what they share in common, in addition to their Middle European backgrounds and their accents, is that they were both kind of snubbed a bit by the auteurist critics, who looked for that personal and the personal touch, that sort of that unmistakable visual style that leaves a sort of signature stamp of the director. Ford, Hawks, Hitchcock, others who were really championed, Lang, who were championed by the French Cahiers, the critics around Cahiers de Cinema, and then on these shores by those who kind of fell under the spell of Molly's late husband, Andrew Sarris, whose book, The American Cinema in 1968 was kind of a Bible for budding American cinephiles who began to kind of categorize and organize films using those categories. And in fact, with Wilder, I think he's in Less Than Meets the Eye, nice category, right? Not the Pantheon directors, and I can't even remember where Curtiz finds himself. I remember I did a critical biography of Edgar G. Ulmer, and he found his way into the expressive esoterica category of Sarris's book. I can't remember whether Curtiz did even worse than Ulmer. Such very, very different directors. But the Wilder and Curtiz were just not thought of in the same vein as these auteurist. I always joke with my students that they tend to be white guys with eye patches. They almost all, whether it's Nick Ray or Fuller, they all have an eye patch.
John Ford,
Lang, Ford, exactly. You got to have an eye patch. It's those sort of renegade directors,
Pirates. They're all a bunch of pirates.
Yeah, exactly. 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 And Curtiz was not, and Curtiz, he made so many movies. I mean, if you look at his filmography, it's staggering. I can't even tell you. I mean, he definitely into the triple digits. I don't know where, 165. I mean, just crazy, crazy number of films. And he was enormously efficient as well as enormously proficient. And you're right, though, despite that, that his ability to kind of churn out high quality films, he does, as you put it, I think, fill out the frame. He does, he is attentive to visual aspects. He's not just some sort of a hack director.
Not at all. I think maybe he's a victim of his own success in that he basically dictates what studio style becomes, and then you just go, oh, he's just doing the studio style. Well, no, he's actually making what everybody else is aspiring to around him. And I mean, I do have my problems with Curtiz a little bit, because I do feel, after a couple of years after Casablanca, he makes the Santa Fe Trail, which is one of the most horrible racist films of that period, of sort of black people saying, "Oh no, we quite like slavery. Don't get us all riled up." It's Birth of the Nation, but like 30 years later. So I'm not like just celebratory without any, but I just think in terms of those achievements, Mildred Pierce,
Mildred Pierce is a great movie,
all the way back to the 30s as well. And the sort of like creepy films that he made horror movies. I mean, they're all great,
Oh yeah, he really churned out the silence. I don't know, with 2-reelers, 3-reelers, 5-reelers. He did it all. And then one of my things is funny. I just read that the memoir by Mel Brooks, and I was thinking of Robin Hood Men in Tights, but he did the Robin Hood that was a great success.
Right? Yeah, the Errol Flynn.
Yeah, the Errol Flynn, and he had a lot of box office success for sure, but definitely for whatever reason, and the reasons I think we spelled them out, at least some of them right now, but didn't attain the kind of status that some of these auteur directors managed to achieve in the eyes of the discerning critic.
And then I think the one of the people we haven't really spoken about much that we could sort of close on, if you like, is also Humphrey Bogart, which is that my first entry into the movie was definitely, as I said before, a sort of Humphrey Bogart season, even though it was Ingrid Bergman probably that hooked me. But Bogart, this is kind of like a surprising sort of peak of his career, really.
Oh, it's a huge transition for him, and he was very concerned about it. He didn't know whether he had what it took to be a romantic lead, a Hollywood leading man. He'd played all of these toughs, these thugs. It's ironic that the one of the many biographies written on Bogart that came out by Stephen Canfor, which is tough without a gun, whereas he's often one of the gun-toted. But I guess he is so tough. You think about it, Maltese Falcon, he doesn't necessarily need a gun. He's just. But yeah, he came, this sort of hot on the heels of the Maltese Falcon, which Bergman was said to have gone, and it was still in theatrical release, and she claimed in one of the many interviews that she would go and watch that movie as a means of trying to understand who this Humphrey Bogart was, because they really they didn't have much. I mean, people think of this movie as one of the most romantic and kind of erotically charged relationships on screen, whatever, but they it wasn't there off screen, and she found him kind of inscrutable. But he was very concerned about playing a romantic lead. I mentioned, moments ago, we were talking about Paul Henreid as Laszlo, and he only gets a little peck on the cheek, and is a psychoanalyst who was once in the crowd in Philadelphia, and when I was peddling the book, said to me, he says, "He's really daddy. He's daddy. Paul Henreid, he's daddy, and Rick is the lover." I'm like, okay, I'll go with that. I'm like, please don't psychoanalyze me now. But anyway. The many things that worried Bogart were, one, the height differential. He was very worried that Ingrid Bergman would tower above him, and so he wears in the 9-minute flashback to Paris, he wears, and they're dancing to Perfidia, he wears these 3-inch platform shoes so that he can at least take care of that part. Also, he wasn't known to be able to dance much, not a great dancer, and so he was a little bit worried about that. And he said in an interview, he says, I didn't really do much different in Casablanca than I did in the many, many films that predate it. It's just with Ingrid Bergman, when she looks at me the way that she does on screen, poof, suddenly I was a romantic lead. And as fate would have it, also the highest paid male actor in Hollywood from that point onward. So I mean, it was a really transformative role for Bogey. I mean, look, there are a lot of other wonderful performances, especially when you think of his, and not only his later relationship with Lauren Bacall, but also the performances on screen with Lauren Bacall in To Have and Have Not and The Big Sleep. And so, you know, there are many more performances that Bogart still had ahead of him. But this is the one I think that well, just like the beginning of A Beautiful Friendship, this was the beginning of a new phase for Bogart's career as a romantic lead.
Yeah, he sort of, it gives him a freedom to do quite a lot of different things, and even going back to Wilder, you get him turning up in Sabrina Fair. And you know, again, there's a mismatch in terms of age and in terms of sort of luminosity, and he's like a black hole. He sort of just sucks in
Wilder regretted that casting decision, and they did not get along at all. And Bogey really apparently mocked Wilder's accent a lot on scene, not on screen, on set, and that drove Wilder a bit crazy, and he had some nasty words for him afterwards. But he also, you know, when Bogart was dying, Wilder, you know, went and visited him, and I think that they patched things up. But yeah, that was an odd casting choice in Sabrina, I think. But you know, he's Bogey, and together with the young Audrey Hepburn, despite the age, and look, this, especially at that point in time, these massive age differences, they didn't seem to mean, and especially in Wilderland, you think of, for instance, Love in the Afternoon, Gary Cooper and Audrey Hepburn too.
Yeah.
Equally large age difference didn't really much matter. And when you think about it, as we know, how, as Susan Sontag, of course, also remarked about, how movies taught us how to act, how to carry ourselves, when to, as she also says it in the same piece, she says that they tell us that it looks cool to wear a trench coat. But I think that, sure, I mean, you see all these movies with older men and young, they plant lots of ideas, I think, in we're talking about aspirational viewing. There's then also aspirational, you know, sort of wish fulfillment, aspirational behavior. And I think a lot of these films, I'm not suggesting that was in any way their malicious intent, but I think that the people do have a tendency to emulate what they see on screen.
And I mean, it even makes it explicit in the flashback period when they're talking about, where were you like this time? I had braces on my teeth. I was looking for a job. You know, it's like,
exactly.
You weren't the same age, were you?
Not even close.
Not even close. Listen, Noah, I would like to ask you one final question, which is, I want a book recommendation off you. We always ask for a film book recommendation. So what would you suggest our listeners go and pick up? Oh God! So I just read the memoir by Mel Brooks. That was a lot of fun. I'm not sure that would not be the one that I recommend. I had a good time. It was over the holidays, and I got a good laugh at certain moments. I'm thinking of getting that on audiobook, actually, because Mel Brooks is actually that would be the audiobook. That would be really fun. I really enjoyed the Mark Harris's last book, the biography of Mike Nichols. Mike Nichols. Thank you very much. For some reason, I always blank on that name. I have to confess, I was just thinking of Elaine May. I'm like, biography of Elaine May. Like the unknown guy who plays opposite of Elaine May in the early work. Yes, of Mike Nichols. That's a great read, really great read. He's a terrific writer. And it's a wonderful story. And the story of Mike Nichols is fascinating, from his, Berlin childhood to America, to the early work that he did at the University of Chicago with Elaine May, to this full range of movies. And incidentally, it's funny, Mike Nichols is very different from Curtiz, but they both trafficked in so many different genres and took on, and some of the movies, were great hits, others were terrible flops.
I actually think, Nick, it's funny. There's a point in the biography by Harris where he quotes from what Wilder gave Nichols some advice. I think it was something along, if I'm not mistaken, is he says, when you're telling a story, you need to be sure to leave a few pearls behind, I think is what he said. But I think Wilder and Nichols maybe have an even closer kinship. The thing that's fascinating in that, I mean, the book is terrific, so that's my endorsement. But
Sure.
that's fascinating for me is I'm not as much of a theater person. I don't really come from the theater world, but Nichols clearly did. And that's something that I think also sets him apart from Curtiz, from Wilder, from others. I mean, they're all from the old country, so to speak, and Nichols was considerably younger than either of the other two we've been talking about, but he also very much came out of the theater, just as so many directors did from the very world into which he was born. All of those who fled to Max Reinhardt and worked together with Max Reinhardt, that great theater impresario, in Vienna at the Theater in the Josefstadt, or later at the Deutsches Theater in Berlin. In Nichols's case, he really came out of the world of the theater, and that's the kind of transition that he makes to the screen. But that's a wonderful read. Sorry, again, I think it's the coffee talking at this point, John. I went off a bit on a tangent, but I think that's the book that I would recommend. I did like a lot, though. This is fun. Apropos of watching movies with Mom, there is a kind of, as the title will tell you in a second, but the endearing and kind of lovely book by Michael Koreski called Films of Endearment.
Oh no, I haven't heard.
Yeah,
of that.
and it's about what his sort of his history, it's mainly memoir, but of watching movies with his mother, and how that kind of shaped him as a lover of film and as a critic. That one I really enjoyed. What else? I don't know. I gave you a couple.
Those sound great. That last one I haven't heard of. So
one last one. Sorry, because I'm not quite done with it, but I'm really loving it. Is Dana Stevens' new book on Buster Keaton. She has a new book that's on Keaton. It's called Cameraman, and it's not just on Keaton, but it's on Keaton, how Keaton's work kind of how it jibes or dovetails with all of these other things that are happening in the 20th century. How Keaton is sort of a key player, agent in that larger kind of historical, socio-political and historical constellation. So that's a terrific read. I'm about three quarters of the way done with that now.
Oh, I'm definitely getting that, because I've emailed Dana as well, and she's I think she's open to coming on as a guest. So I want to read it, obviously, before she does. And I'm a huge Buster Keaton fan. Buster Keaton is my go-to happy place.
Oh yeah, well, it makes good sense. We're going to start with Buster Keaton in a couple of weeks. I'm teaching comedies of classical Hollywood. We're going to begin with Keaton. We'll begin with Keaton, Chaplin, maybe a bit of Harry Lloyd. We'll see, and then we'll get into the talkies. Get into to Lubitsch, get into the original Thin Man, a little bit of William Powell and Myrna Loy, and then into some sort of screwball land for a good while, and then make our way up to we end with so Girls Trip, Crazy Rich Asians, and Booksmart will be the last movies that we get to. So we sort of get out of the classical, but look for a certain resonance or a certain structural impact that in terms of script, in terms of story, that these classical comedies from classical Hollywood have for later comedies. But
comedy is so difficult, isn't it? I mean, comedy's so difficult to recognize current comedy. I think it's easy to look back and go, oh, I love Blazing Saddles, I love all the Airplane or whatever, but right now it took me ages to watch Clueless and just think, God, this is a brilliant film.
I used to teach that every semester, and I did a big lecture class, a sort of history of cinema, and I would teach it. It's a great movie, and it's a great movie in the classroom. It's the student. There's so much to make of Clueless. It's worth revisiting. or for people who've never discovered it, certainly worth discovering. And Amy Heckerling, the director, is just enormously talented and has a wonderful career, and is worthy of reappraisal for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, thank you, Noah, so much for spending this time with me, and congratulations on the book, man.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. You're very kind. It was a lot of fun talking with you, John. And I know that the Faber paperback is definitely still out. I believe the Norton one is too. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited. People, it's a movie about which people have tons and tons to discuss. And so it's been a great pleasure talking with you. And I'm always happy. Casablanca is sort of my happy place too.
So that was me and Noah talking about his new book, We'll Always Have Casablanca. It was a great opportunity for me, a real treat. I really enjoyed reading Noah's book and talking with him. He's a very interesting and, as you can hear, very warm and funny guy. And the book is likewise brilliant. If you're a fan of Casablanca, and let's face it, if you're listening to this podcast, you kind of have to be. It's kind of be illegal for you not to like Casablanca. So if you're a fan of Casablanca and you want to know more, there is something for everyone here. There is definitely information here that you don't know and that will enrich your enjoyment of the film. All that's left for me to do is thank Elliot Atkins for the music and Ali Howard for the artwork. And until next week, please take care.
Cue the fireplace and your favorite fall movie. There's nothing better than a cozy evening at home with a glass of First Leaf wine. First Leaf is a personalized wine club that delivers right to your door. Sounds magical, right? They get to know your favorite tasting notes, which varietals you enjoy, and whether you prefer sweet or dry wines. So in every shipment, you get bottles tailored to your unique palate. Go to tryfirstleaf.com/fall to get your first 6 wines for just $44.95 with free shipping.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.